Welcome to Lesson 3 for Science 7. This is ecosystems within ecosystems. So an ecosystem, we mentioned in class that ecosystems are not a place, it's a series of interactions. And those areas of interactions can be very large or very small. And again, the ecosystem is not a place. So a large ecosystem could be something like the Cohoots-Tamine Valley and small koi pond or discarded bottle. So, and we mentioned again that it's that series of interactions or that set of interactions between the living and non-living parts of the environment. So you're living to living, non-living to non-living, and living to non-living interactions. Now, within ecosystems, you can have smaller ecosystems. So let's take outside our North Forest. You have a forest ecosystem. That is quite a large ecosystem. Within that ecosystem, you would see the creek bed. So the things and the interactions that are going on in the creek are different than the interactions that are going on in the forest as a whole. Within the creek, you may have a rotting log, and the interactions that are taking place within that rotting log are also its own individual set of interactions, therefore making it its own ecosystem. Now remember, what we have here, again, just like when we did our species, population, and communities, is we have a nested circle diagram. And remember that a nested circle diagram shows you the parts of a whole, right? So here we have the rotting log ecosystem was a small ecosystem nestled within the creek bed ecosystem, which is a little bit bigger, nestled within the forest ecosystem, which is bigger yet. So nested circle diagrams are, again, good models for showing how smaller ecosystems are nested within larger ecosystems. So in each of those ecosystems on the previous slide, you would find living and non-living parts interacting with each other. But as I mentioned, within each of those ecosystems, those interactions are going to be different. So when we study a small ecosystem, it's way more practical and convenient to study them at a small area rather than studying large ones. But we need to remember that those small ones are always part of a larger picture. Okay, the Earth is one large ecosystem called the biosphere, and a biosphere meaning life, sphere meaning round or ball, and this includes all the places on the Earth where living things are found, which is essentially everywhere. Now, it's impossible to study the biosphere as one giant ecosystem, so the scientists have divided up the biosphere into various ways to make it easier to study. So they've identified areas on the Earth that are quite similar. They have the same temperatures, same amount of precipitation, same amount of sunlight. Okay, and we call those areas biomes. So the areas of the Earth that have those similar characteristics are called biomes. And there's a bunch of different biomes around the Earth. We have rainforest biomes, we have desert biomes, we have tundra biomes, we have mountain biomes and polar region biomes. And the biomes themselves are still quite large. Okay, so even within those large biomes, the smaller ecosystems within those biomes are way easier to study. We need to remember that because they're a series of interactions, an ecosystem doesn't start and end on a defined line. Okay, they all overlap each other and are connected to each other and interact with each other in some way. If we take the oceans, for example, the world's ocean is one huge ecosystem that is connected to all of the ecosystems on land. So the things that happen on land affect the ecosystems in the ocean. Animals like salmon that spend a lot of time in the ocean and then come back to spawn in our rivers, they're bringing those interactions and some of those things from the ocean back to the land, so they're still connected to one another. Ocean ecosystems also have ecosystems within them that are very different. For example, smaller ocean ecosystems are very different from open ocean ecosystems, which are different from deep ocean ecosystems, which are very different from surface ecosystems. So as we mentioned, land and ocean biomes overlap. So where salt and fresh water meet, the mixing of that water creates a unique ecosystem for many plants and animals, and we call that area an estuary. We have delta, where the Fraser River flows into the ocean. That creates an estuary. That's slowing down of the water, the mixing of the fresh and salt water, and it creates an estuary. So land and ocean ecosystems are linked where they meet and also over great distances. As I mentioned, the salmon, okay, they link those ecosystems together, so thousands of kilometers apart, and they could still have links. Some birds spend their winters on the ocean but fly back to fresh waters, okay, and salmon, as we mentioned, hatch in fresh water, make their way to salt water, spend their adult lives before finding their way back. Right, so they always overlap, and there's always interconnections between them. Here's a map of the biogeoclimatic zones in BC. So you have alpine tundra, spruce, boreal white and black spruce, subboreal pine, subboreal spruce, and so on and so forth. This is where we live down in here. So we're in the coastal western hemlock biomes. We're going to take a bigger look at bioclimatic zones and discovering where we are and taking a look at what they represent in class.